We're now going to hear from Salim, who is going to talk to us about this in detail. Salim is an expert in this subject, and he will, I don't know whether you've got any of your pieces of equipment with you, but probably just a computer for the time being. Okay? Over to you.
Can you hear me on the mic? Matt, can you hear me? Okay, maybe I'll stick to the podium then. Is it better here? Yeah. Yeah? Okay, good. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to first thank the organizers, the TMS Society, for inviting me to be here today. It's a real honor, really. And the last evening and today has been really an eye-opener for me. So I know very little about TM. Daniel and Doug have made use of neuroanatomists and neurophysiologists, and I'll hopefully make you a biomedical engineer by the end of this, so we'll see. I'll just tell you very briefly who I am and what I've done and where I come from. At the moment I work for a company called TMconFUK2011-11, so hands up for that. It's a German company, and you see there on the screen the headquarters in a little town called Düderstadt in Germany. We've been going for about 91 years, but mainly in prosthetics, so this is probably why most people here, whether you're professional or patient, haven't heard of us. We do mobility and independence products, but mainly prosthetics is the area, and your stimulation is a new addition to the portfolio, if you like, and something that we've been doing over the last 10 years or so. I have another hat on, and that's at the University of Surrey, and that's where really I started my journey with FES back in '99. It was the first time I actually see a stimulator on a patient, and I looked at that and thought, wow, I really want to get into this. And I've not stopped since. So I spent 5 years there doing my studies, my research, and in '05 I got appointed as a lecturer at the biomedical engineering department there, where I was teaching this. When I started Autobock, I've sort of stopped the teaching bit. We're still doing some research there, mainly interested in rehabilitation of gait, and we're applying all sorts of fun technologies, from games to 3D virtual reality stuff to FES, of course, which is what we will talk about. So just a little bit of electrophysiology at the beginning before we go into the technology, and I think the main reason, you really need to get this idea, the main reason why we can actually use FES bike or grasp or walk or stand or whatever, is that the cells, all these cells that we've been talking about, the nerves, the neurons, the axons, they have a little clever thing within their membrane. This is the bit that separates the inside of the cell from the outside of the cell. And they keep the charged particles, what we call the ions, separated. So you always have a little bit of a difference, so you have more negativity on the inside and more positivity on the outside. Yeah, so that's how it is. And that separation of charge basically creates a voltage. Just like in a battery, you have a separation of charge, and we use that light something or drive the motor. So what we have here is we have this separation charge, and that's just there. Okay, the cell is actually working and maintaining that. So what we do is, to get neurostimulation to work, is we use, I'll try and avoid as much as I can sort of technological terminology, etc., okay, and jargon. So we have adhesive pads we stick on the surface, on the skin, and by applying a current from the outside world, from a battery source. Hopefully you're not connected to the mains. If they do that, don't let them do it. And by putting these adhesive pads on the surface of the skin, we apply an electric current, and that's, again, a separation of charge. So it creates a field in between. It's a bit like your magnetic field that, you know, what you do at school in the old days, and you can see sort of the lines between the two poles of a magnet. So here we have electric field, and these are the lines that you see there. And because you have underlying the skin, you have a lot of things going on there. But really what we're trying to hit at is the muscle, and really the nerve, and where the nerve enters that muscle. So we're hoping that by applying this electric field there, we can shift the ions which you saw on the previous screen and actually get the neuron to fire. And here you see another depiction of that in a little cartoon, and this is what Doug was showing you that earlier in the day, where you have the insulation of these gaps, and we're trying to target that membrane and get the neuron to fire. And once the neuron fires, it's like an all or none phenomenon. It's like gets an impulse, and then you get the muscle to respond. So this is really the basics. And what does it look like? I've got a very quick video here to show you. So we have two pads, just like we said, on the skin. We have a battery source and a stimulator, which is controlling that. And when we stimulate, we get a little bit of a response there, okay? Now the question is, why do we want to do that? I thank Daniel for his talk earlier. So he really presented the case for this and how we can actually use it. I'm going to tell you a little bit more details about this. But before we do that, I'm going to tell you about fishing. So, the link here really is that, my message is, what I'm trying to say to you is that this is really not a new thing, okay? So it's not been going on for 10 years or 20 or 50, it's really been going on for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So the Greeks, back in the days, figured out that these fish, we call them electric rays or torpedo fish, actually generate electric currents, shocks, yes, like dropping your hairdryer into the bathtub. Really serious stuff to protect themselves. So the Greeks said, okay, that's a great idea, you know, we'll use them to treat people, yeah? So if you have a headache, they'll bring one of this towards you and your headache will disappear, yeah? It becomes a minor detail. And they actually go into describing this as far back as 400 BC in different sorts of application, although the last one there, they don't really tell you how they do it. Okay, so the important thing nowadays with technologies is basically we have to have the right technology, we have to have something that works and know how to use it, and when to use it. So we have a patient, we have a problem, and we want to know what would work best, or what combination of technologies would work best. Plato and Aristotle, they had to go fishing to do that, yeah, to find the right product. Fortunately today we can look on the market, ask Google, our friend, and find out what we really need, okay? So on here you see some examples. This is a device that we've been demonstrating today over in the workshop, something made by Autobot, but you see some other examples there. But you always have some adhesive pads of different sizes and shapes and colors. You have some cables to connect them to the device, and then you will have a device. You also see here the bike that Daniel's been talking about, and up there we see a system from Bioness, which just goes around your legs, so the whole unit is there. And I'm going to tell you a bit more how all of these things work. So finding the right product is really about doing your research, talking to professionals, coming to meetings like this, going to the exhibition room and just talking to people and trying to find out what is best. We'll be very quick with definitions so you don't get bored, but really what we're doing with stimulation, neurostimulation, is a few key terms there. Innervated, we're looking at muscles which are innervated in 90 or more percent of the cases. So we have an intact peripheral nerve system that we're actually firing, and we're getting a response. As Daniel said earlier, functional is the key term there. So we have to do something which is meaningful, we have to do something which is part of a task, something part of a pattern that you will use in your daily life. There's no good you sitting there watching TV and your arm doing something on the side. Okay, it doesn't work. I want to draw the distinction here with a few other things. Some of you have probably heard of TENS. This is sort of a very low-level type of stimulation, usually used for pain and back pain and things like that. This is not what we're doing here. We're actually eliciting a movement here. We're getting a muscle to respond. And when we're doing stimulation in a functional way, we can be replacing or aiding a function, and this could be walking or standing up, etc. But we can also use stimulation with the idea of weaning you off that later on. So you would use that as a therapy. In Autobot jargon, we call that functional electrotherapy. Other people will call it something different. But the idea here is that you have a device, you have a program or programs, you're using that part of your overall therapy, and you're achieving a goal, and after that you don't need it. And that we call therapeutic electrical stimulation or functional electrotherapy. It's just the terms that I will be using them. So the clinical uses, I've listed these up here, and I'm going to tell you a few stories for each one, well, not each one of these, for three of them. So the main message, though, to remember always here is that we're using this just as a tool in the box for the therapist and for the professional or your treating doctor. So we're always adding this to whatever therapy that you're having, and you can see there a list of things. I'm going to tell you about them a little bit more. So we're going to start first with what we call orthotic effects for neuromuscular electrical stimulation or neurostimulation, or FES. And here, again, to really hammer that message of technologies are there, but you have to use them during your rehab process. Sorry. So here we can see at Autobot we have some concepts in this where we can use different types. You can see wheelchairs, orthotics, implants, electrotherapy, etc. during the process of rehabilitation. And this is really important that we need to find what stage we need to be using these things. So we're going to start with orthotic FES, and the reason I start with that is really this is one of the very early attempts of using stimulation functionally. I'm going to show you a couple of videos here. One of our patients in Germany. In this case, this is a stroke patient, but I think some of you here can relate to the drop foot effect that you see there, which is making him walk slow, or slower than he used to. Safety implications there in terms of tripping. And also the walking is more effortful. There's more effort involved, more energy he's consuming to get from point A to B as compared to you and me if you didn't have that condition. And the reason we have that problem there is when we follow the gait cycle, so this is for one complete cycle of you moving, we can see the muscle there which is at the front of the leg here, that we really need when we're trying to clear the ground. So as I take a step with my right, I need to lift that foot, otherwise my foot is going to drag and I'm going to start compensating in all sorts of ways. And that's really the problem there. The result is a compensation mechanism, is the lack of that activity, the whole biomechanics of the chain, and it's a simple problem, complex result, but really the solution is very simple. And this solution came in 1961 in the form of a publication, and this was the first paper on this idea of fixing gait in hemiplegic patients using stimulation. So if any of you here know what the products look like on the market out there, you will notice that not a lot has changed since 1961. So we have a little box, we have some electronics and a battery, we have some wires running down to the leg, we have some adhesive pads, the electrodes, and we have some kind of switch in the shoe that's timing that stimulation. So this is how it all started, and the team there were able to demonstrate this by taking sequences of pictures, yeah, just like you can do nowadays. We can do this in a more objective, accurate way by taking people into the lab and looking at differences in their joint movements and demonstrating that actually we are fixing that drop foot and therefore having a result. So here I want to show you a number of examples of different devices that are out there on the market, and you can go and find out whether these will work for you to correct your drop foot in FES. So just a word of warning here. The device that I'm talking about, Actigate, is a fairly recent addition, fairly recent development. It's been in prototype format since 1999. We got CE approval for this in 2006. for stroke patients. So I'm going to tell you about this. You will get excited perhaps about it, but at the moment we're working with stroke patients. We have about 50 of those in Europe, and we're trying to build our experience there. But I think this will be quite interesting for you to see. So what we developed, just like Liberson did 50 odd years ago, just using modern components, an external control unit that's sitting there at the waist, an antenna connected with a wire, and a switch which is sitting there, again, controlling this wirelessly. So we made it look nicer, of course more reliable, better batteries, etc. And we said, we don't want to have to worry about these surface adhesive pads because of the problems they come with, and I can tell you about this later. We designed an implant. So this is a bit similar to what the rats had, except this doesn't activate with light. That would be quite funny, yeah? Somebody flashes a light at you. So here, the way we actually trigger this is using the switch, the wireless switch in the leg. But really, it's very, very similar concept. So you have a receiver unit there. It's fully passive, so there's no battery. We don't have to worry about recharging it, etc. But we put that inside the leg, and we're targeting exactly the same nerve, which is what we call the peroneal nerve. So this is the nerve really that feeds the muscle that bring your foot up and out. Okay? So you see it flows up there. And here is a little bit of an animation to try and tell you what's going on. So now whether it's a surface system like the one you can see today in the exhibition, or whether it's an implantable system, the basic idea is that you lift your heel, the switch detects that, and it fires a signal up, whether through a wire or through a wireless link, to a control unit, which then sends the impulse to the antenna. In the case of a surface stimulator, straight to the adhesive electrode, in our case to the implanted electrode, and it activates that nerve, distorts that voltage that I spoke about earlier, gets the muscles to contract, and boom, you've got foot lift. Now you would think, yeah, that's very simple. What is the impact of that? And the impact of that can be seen here. So we have this lady here, she's again a stroke patient, and you can see the effect on the foot during what we call the mid-swing phase of gait. So this is halfway through you swing. The ankle lifted up, so the toes pointing upwards, and also the important thing is that the angle, if you look at it from this plane, is more neutral there. So basically, less chance of you tripping and landing on the outside of the leg. So now I'm going to show you some videos on the difference that this makes, and this you probably have seen before, something similar, but not. I'll explain to you what's going on. So here we have one of our early patients over in Nijmegen in the Netherlands. And he's had the surgery, but he hasn't used the device yet. So he came in for what we call an activation session, and here he's trying to ambulate. Apologies about the quality, but it's a really good video, and I want to show it to you. So he can walk. There's some balance issues there. There's a drop foot, definitely. A bit of compensation, him swinging outside, trying to compensate for his drop foot. And on the right here is basically the first time we let him use that device. And I just want you to see the walking stick in his right arm. So Mr. Massa is a farmer, he's back in the farm, and he tells us, he says that I don't care about how I walk, I got rid of that walking stick. Yeah, I can go shopping, I can carry things. Because his other arm is affected because of his stroke. Yeah, so this is slightly different to what we will see here. But this is an example of him, the first time ever using that device, and then we see him 6 months later, and we look at him with the device switched off. And yes, he can walk a little bit better. He's still slow, a bit of lack of confidence there, walking against the wall, swinging his leg outwards, etc. So he had some kind of therapy effect, perhaps from the exercise, perhaps from the concepts that Daniel was talking about earlier, from the stimulation coming in, but he can still benefit from that device. This is almost unbelievable, and I still get some people saying that can't be right. So his walking is almost normal. When we did the actual numbers on this, and the numbers will be very similar from one study to the other, you will notice that the patients can walk faster, and they can walk longer at less effort. Okay, this is basically the essence of this, and of course we've done safety studies to make sure that this all works and got it out. Interestingly though, and this is where engineers have to work with clinicians, have to talk to the patients, have to get the feedback from the patients, the family, everybody. The most important thing that people were telling us is it's confidence, okay? So we were really excited about all the numbers and experiments, etc., but all they wanted to hear about, yeah, I feel more confident with this. I trust this thing, it's going to get me from A to B without tripping. So So there are a lot of studies in this done by different groups around the world. Quite a lot of it is here in the UK. And eventually, NICE, who are not very nice, got the guidance out in 2009, basically saying there's sufficient evidence now to warrant this. Okay, it's not obligatory, so PCTs can still say no to patients in terms of funding. And that's a sore point for us, manufacturers, developers, and clinicians. And I'll come back to that in a moment. So that was the first story of orthotic FPS, using it for a specific replacement of function in your daily life routines. So the second one is conditioning, and again, I thank Daniel for talking about this earlier, so improving strength and endurance, and I'll just go through that fairly quickly, showing you just a case example here. Somebody who I met on Wednesday, together with John, who's sitting there, having TM quite a while back, so the muscles have pretty much atrophied. There was nothing sort of happening lower down, and the focus is always on the upper body, get the strength, get the wheelchair transfer sorted, core stability, etc. So the chap here has actually attempted neurostimulation before. In his case, the lesion was so affected that the muscles actually got denervated. So those axons that we've been talking about, those signal wires, have kind of started to disappear, and the muscles are not getting that in. So what I showed you on the second screen there, the pads firing the nerve, firing the muscle, just wouldn't work with it. So we had to do something slightly different, and slightly different is denervated muscle stimulation. So denervated muscle stimulation here, we're using 1,000 times more energy to actually zap the muscle. Okay? So we got a couple of electrodes on the thigh there, and our idea was first, are we going to get anything? Yeah? So that was the first question, and are we going to be able to manage any stimulation effects there? And after a few attempts, we go, you really have to look closely here, but hopefully you can see a little bit of a twitch and a light coming on. So the discussion now that we're having in terms of using this device is basically we can work on those twitch contractions that we have there, and the goals may be simply cosmetic. It could be trying to rebuild that muscle bulk, trying to get those fibers a bit stronger, and hopefully have all the indirect effects that Daniel have already described to you in terms of circulation, etc. The biggest concern with this is you and your motivation to do this, because when we come to things like this, it's really high commitment on your behalf in terms of the hours that you have to do on a very regular basis for this to give you some results. The third one is facilitation and re-education, and this is really the most exciting stuff really. We want you not to have to depend on this, but we want you to use this to get better and then regain voluntary control. So this is the next story, and I'll explain that a little bit here. So normally we have the pads on the muscle, so in this case we're trying to activate the muscles that bring the wrist up and the fingers. But what we're doing here is basically we're not just forcing that contraction, we're checking what's actually there. Okay? So we basically use the device to not only stimulate but also read. So we pick up the signal from that muscle. There's an electric signal there, and even if you look at the arm, and we see this with patients the whole time, we saw it actually an hour ago with one of the patients. Even if you can't see a movement in the wrist, there might be actually some firing happening there linked to your intention to it. And we can pick up that signal and then use that to trigger the stimulation. And the idea here is we complete the loop. So just like you're descending, the signals, the wires coming down are not active. Also we want the ones coming up to reactivate and to get the cycle all completed together. And here we'll see one example of a study that was done against stroke patients, but we've seen that with TM patients now. With the help of Farshida and a few other therapists who are excited about this. And the idea here is we're doing a task-oriented type of training. So the lady here is trying to pick up the cup and move it across. And in stroke, we always try and get the arm to extend. So this is the reason why she's going from the right to the left with her right arm. And those pads there are firing in a sequence, and she triggers them by trying to reach up to that cup. And they do this for 8 weeks, on a daily basis, about half an hour or so, in addition to the therapy. I mean, other examples would be things like hand to mouth, things that are really meaningful for you. So when we got this technology where we can trigger the stimulation, we can also take the stimulation completely out. And again, biofeedback is something that Daniel mentioned earlier. And the idea here is we get you to play a game, just like you do on PlayStation or Nintendo Wii, but the input to that is not you moving or dancing around or or balancing on a board or whatever, the input to the game is your muscle activity. And that muscle could be any muscle you pick. So here you see that lady driving a game, a balloon, an air balloon game. If we're into air balloons, we've got a car game as well for the boys. So we're working on a cartoon one for the kids. We haven't got that yet. So to demonstrate here, we have a little princess there who's been using this, again with the help of Rashida at her clinic. And the idea here is, again, we're trying to do something functional. We're trying to rebuild patterns, whether it's balancing or whether it's kicking a ball away. We had a long fight, long battle last night to get the movies to work from an Apple Mac to Microsoft Windows, and we failed. I was up till 3 and I just gave up. So we only got screenshots there, but the idea is that Astrid is trying to balance by stimulating her back extensors and the calf muscles. We're trying to shift her balance forward and backwards, and we're trying to exercise that. And on the other side, we're trying to exercise the quadriceps. So this is her kicking away, and we're using the biofeedback game to actually get her to engage with this and have fun with it. No harm having fun when you're getting therapy, is there? So the umbrella above all of this in terms of what is actually motivating us and what is actually driving this, and I think from a government point of view, we have here a very important document published in 2005 which sets out a 10-year strategy for people with long-term neurological conditions. If you're aware of this, great. If you're not, use it in your arguments, in your appeals, in your cries to whoever. So this is really sums it up very, very nicely, is that people do need to regain independence. This is the key thing. And this is one of the quality requirements in that frame. So as an academic, as a researcher, as a scientist, you spend a lot of time doing studies that Daniel is doing. We then get a product, we do a prototype, we do a trial, we then battle with people like FDA and CE marking, we then get that, and then we have a device. And then we wait maybe 40, 50 years, and then NICE says, okay, you've got enough evidence now, okay, great. But really, it's not straightforward, and the battle has to be won on many, many fronts, really the message. So it's really important to keep the expectations real. A lot of things are really exciting, and I think you know, we should be seeing really nice things coming about very soon, but we have to keep those expectations real. So with that in mind, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the future things that we're doing, and I think we've got 4 points really to look at. We definitely need to improve the devices. Yeah? Every time we use a device with a new patient, we get some information, some feedback back, whether it's the clinician or the patient themselves. So we have to improve these things, we have to get them better. For example, the device you see there is what I call the leg pacemaker. Okay? So this is something that goes in the leg, you don't have to worry about it, and you don't need to have a switch even, you don't need to have anything. Okay? So we have to get these things better, we have to develop new devices, and we definitely need to get the science right, so these things can work, and always watch out for all the exciting future treatments that we've been hearing about today. FES is not limited to what I showed you. That was just a brief overview of a few examples, and on this diagram you can see stimulation really at work and a number of other examples. So to sum up and end, I think we have very good evidence for FES and FET in neurological conditions. Yes, it's limited in TM, but it's coming along. I think one of the barriers that we have is very limited awareness, just being out there and talking to people who haven't heard of this or haven't even tried it. And I think we take part of the blame as manufacturers with that we haven't been very successful with that. And funding, of course, is one of the biggest barriers, I believe, in this country. I've listed down the benefits that we can have and the potential in terms of regaining function long term. Hopefully, by seeing this presentation today, you sort of get a bit of a flavor of how we can use this in the longer term. Thank you.